Hello everyone, this is Adrian Gold. I am excited to talk about Lincoln and the Civil War. I want to be honest with you, I had written my book. I didn't want to study Lincoln, I just wanted to study the financial aspect of the Civil War. And I didn't want to skip this story. So because the period was too long in between the Civil War and the implementation of the Federal Reserve Bank was kind of like 1860 to 1913, and I felt like, well, that's 50 years. What happened in between? So first of all, let me tell you what happened. During this period, there were an enormous amount of booms and busts, often created by creditors, a lot of the time by the one across the sea, the Rothschild. And basically you got an expansion and then contraction. So they contract the credit, there's less money. There are so many that it's ridiculous because they didn't have a central bank between around 1936 to the next one. So it was kind of like a jungle in the banking industry. For this, I had to try to figure out how can I tell this quick story. And so I created this character, David. He's a musician studying in New York City and spends hours and hours practicing his cello. It is one of my favorite instruments and one I would have loved to study when I was a young kid. So I introduced it in this story. And there's a new class that is added to his program, and he's struggling with it. He doesn't like it. He just feels so overwhelmed with it. The class is called Cross-Platform Synergy. And the subject of the class is find a piece of music that would represent the Civil War. Any kind of music. And so my character, David, he's going back and forth. I want this, I want to try this, I want to try that. And I use a lot of good examples. If you want some Rachmaninoff, some Debussy. When you go to read the story, try to check out the music because there's some really good samples. He finds himself on the train going back home to his apartment with his cello, and he meets this young lady. And I parallel their meeting to a painting by Diego Rivera. I think it's on the bottom right of the painting, and it's about a prostitute. For me, through the character of David, I see her as a goddess. And so she has long hair, and in between this strange painting is a white arm cut, floating. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect. So she approaches him, asking him about his cello, and he extends his arm, a white arm, floating in the air like in the painting. She leaves the train, he follows her, and realizes there's no way. He's on the train stop. It's at the Yankee Stadium train station. There are people everywhere. He just gives up, gets back on the train. So he talks to his father. His father says, call your uncle, Uncle George. He's an expert on the Civil War and he can help you. Uncle George calls him, hey, let's get together and let's have dinner. And that's the way I was going to tell my story, the conversation between the two of them. David trying to figure out the music and Uncle George giving him background to what the Civil War meant in terms of statistics. But I think 3 out of 4 deaths during the Civil War had to do with disease and not battles. I also read a book about this man. He was an economic hitman. And again, read the book, you'll get the references. And so I'm introducing this character, and he says, so David asked him, so what do you do, Uncle George? I am an economic hitman. If the rich want something, I'll go get it for them. They want this land somewhere because there's lithium or whatever it is they want, I'll go get it. I'll become a friend, and believe me, I met one. I met a gentleman in a certain country, I'm not going to name, but I met a person like this who work on behalf of developer. Now, what do they develop? Doesn't matter. They want it, is the one who goes, smiles, shakes hands, does everything in his power, money, to get what they want. We have two voices, the music from the side of David. In the end, the assignment is not so much about what music is, how you would express the music. So if you're on your cello, would you play the cello differently, knowing that you are describing this feeling, war? And finally, his uncle gets through to him and he asks him, close your eyes. And he starts picturing a soldier, muddy and blood, moving forward. He keeps on going and now he starts to get the idea. And so I think this is a great story. You get the balance, duality again between the music, and then he ends up with the third symphony by a musician called Eric Gorecki, Heartbreaking. Again, look on the book or look online on YouTube, Henry Gorecki, and find the interview. I think it's for the Canadian broadcast. Will blow your mind, will break your heart. It's touching, and so he ends the story with this. So we cover the Civil War like this. This is really a short story, but I'm very proud of it because it was very, very quick. It really came out very nicely and delivers a ton of action and ton of information. So all the information I share are real. I talk about Roscoe Conklin, a senator in New York, and then the other day I was in New York, and here was his statue, and I could not believe it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this character is in my book. I hope you enjoy it. It's a great story, more despotic than a monarchy. Have a great day. Thank you.